In the ancient past, there were whispers and legends about a secret knowledge concerning the ancient lore of the antediluvian age, the pre-flood world. This information was written down on scrolls describing a group of supernatural beings, called ominously the Watchers, which were the origin of what would be commonly called today the fallen angels. These writings describe who they were, what they set out to do, the mutant race of giants they spawned, and the evil that they would unleash upon the world. It also explains how God and the archangels had to save the world from the bloodbath that ensued, and thus the great flood and an underground abyssal prison would be needed to save this world from the clutches of unrestrained evil. However, this scroll would also foretell the future, where in an age to come there would be an anointed one who would restore the broken world scarred by centuries of evil and give a final judgment. I'm Nathan Collins, and this is the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is probably one of the most popular ancient books of interest today concerning biblical themes that was not included in the Christian canon. Although claiming to be Enoch's apocalyptic writing, it was actually composed at least 4,000 years after Enoch's time. Its age of composition going back to only the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD. At least the oldest parts of it anyway. And based on the content, which focuses exclusively on the antediluvian era. The other parts are even later additions, composed around the 1st century. The inspiration to write the Book of Enoch comes from a couple odd, but of course intriguing passages in Genesis. It also comes from an anti-Hellenistic spirit as weaved in the story as well. Before we dive into the book, it's probably best to go over the foundation for the inspiration of Enoch. Like many of these pseudo-works, it begins from the all-too-common desire of humans wanting to know more, wanting the extended edition of the Bible, so to speak. In Genesis, it talks about the generations who come after Adam, from his 3rd son, Seth, after Cain kills Abel and God curses Cain, and so he's banished. Enoch is one of those early descendants of the antediluvian world. Enoch's story, though, stands out among the generations mentioned after Adam. Not only does the Bible point out that he walks with God, indicating that he must have had some kind of special close relationship with the Creator, but it gets even more interesting when Enoch's life synopsis ends with, God took him. Genesis chapter 5, verse 24. So, unlike every other genealogy covered in the Bible, Enoch is given no age of death recorded. This, of course, is hard not to wonder what was going on with Enoch and God and what happened to him. Thus, this brief passage in Genesis has led to innumerable legends and lore as to what this means, what happened. There's more background to note, though, for the setting of the book of 1st Enoch. Genesis gets really strange when we go to chapter 6, where at the time of Noah, the text begins talking about the world of this time, and Noah, also, by the way, Noah is Enoch's great-grandson. Noah's time was infamous for its unrestrained evil upon the earth. Within this evil-saturated context, Genesis 6 begins with telling us that when man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then Yahweh said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. This passage has probably given rise to the most speculation of any of the passages from the canonical Bible we have covered so far. What are the beings being described here? Where did they go? What led to these events? What was the world like at this time? All these questions many have had over the centuries. And 1 Enoch attempts to answer these questions and a little more. 1 Enoch explains that fallen angels, or watchers, as 1 Enoch calls them, are the sons of God who reproduced with human women and then produced giant mutant creatures who wreaked havoc on mankind and the world. They corrupted and perverted mankind through teaching in the forbidden arts, like making weapons, vanity, greed for precious metals. Despite the Watchers' crimes, Enoch tries to intercede on behalf of the fallen angels, but it's too late. He is told to proclaim their impending doom in chapters 12 through 16. Then later, in chapters 45 to 57, we get an interesting passage where it talks about a heavenly Messiah to come in the future, the righteous one, the Son of Man. He is depicted as a pre-existent heavenly being who is majestic, possesses all power, and sits on his throne of glory, passing judgment upon all flesh and spiritual beings. The coming judgment day, where the righteous dead will be resurrected, the Messiah will appear. His kingdom will be created, and the new Jerusalem will be built. The sinners, the watchers, the fallen angels, and the apostate Jews will be judged. Then later in chapters 95 to 105, the wicked will be condemned to eternal punishment in Sheol, a subterranean hell. And the righteous will have a resurrection to enjoy the bliss of a heavenly life. This is what composes the book of 1 Enoch. So, if you've ever wondered what this book of 1 Enoch is about, this is a brief overview and survey of the book. It's about what happened in the early stages of creation, what happened with the fallen angels, and what will happen in the future. These questions are answered in this book. These are the questions the writers of 1 Enoch are attempting to answer. Now, if you're interested in learning more and want to see the real details of the story and kind of dive in, there is a great source here that I use. This is the Old Testament Pseudopigrapha, and this is volume 1. It's a 2-volume set, and it's by James H. Charlesworth. He's the editor, so you can probably find this online, I imagine. Yeah, it's a great work. There's a lot of detail in it, so you can really dive in and check it out. And it has many of the other works. So this is only 1 Enoch we covered, but there's also a 2nd Enoch and a 3rd, possibly, if I remember right. And there are many others as well. There's like Abraham and Abraham's Testament, Adam's Testament, all these things. People throughout the ancient world, especially Judaism specifically is who we're talking about, they speculated about all kinds of things, just as we do today. We got the Left Behind series and all that stuff. We speculate about what's going to happen, what the future is. And we come up with stories. And they did as well. So there are a lot of stories. They're interesting. It's interesting to see what people thought back then about different topics. But it's a good resource. It's a scholarly resource to check out if you're interested in learning more. Well, that's all for this episode. I'd like to say thank you to my Patreon supporters. We are blessed to have you, and you keep the lights on here. Thank you. If you're new to this channel and you like this episode, go ahead and subscribe, visit our page on Facebook, and check out our other episodes as we address various issues. Grace and peace, brothers and sisters. Mike, you're kind of tall. I'm pretty sure you're probably a descendant of the giants.